Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. And we do have a good turnout and a couple of people admit people who come in while I'm talking. I'm Susan Burke. I'm from Springfield Annandale branch, and I'm the AAUW co-vice president for programs. And Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Torigny, and I'm Susan's other half. And I'm from Alexandria and Virginia Beach branches.
Okay. It's exciting to have this first all-district meeting and to have members from our 4 districts that are getting together virtually to hear about an important, and as we were talking with Jane before we got started, this is a very timely issue. We're working on another all-district program for early 2026, and we will get out information on that as soon as we've nailed it down. We're recording today's meeting. We'll make the link available to everyone. We've asked everyone's mics have been muted. I guess if you're not muted, mute them. Please keep them off unless you want to ask a question. And when you're done, please turn your mic off again. But we're going to get through the whole program first before questions. As AAUW members, we all know we are nonpartisan. We're a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse candidates for public office. However, it's clear in our public policy principles and priorities that we stand for social justice and civil rights, including expanding voting rights to promote equitable political participation and ensure all Americans have the same access and right to vote. We applaud the work of many of our branches in Get Out the Vote activities, including registering voters, participating in candidate forums, and writing literally thousands of postcards for Reclaim Our Vote. And that is all aimed at increasing voter turnout among marginalized voters. And in the case of this Reclaim Our Vote campaign, it's targeting 90,000 Black voters in Virginia, many of whom we hear believe that their votes don't count. So this leads us to tonight's program, One Person, One Vote, the National Popular Vote versus the Electoral College. I'll turn over to Leslie.
Well, I'm sure every one of us has had an opportunity in life to teach a young child how to play a game. So think about, you teach somebody to play t-ball and they learn that the team that has the most runs wins. And then you teach them basketball, and then you get the hoops, and then the team that has the most points wins. Well, regrettably, for something as important as electing the president of our country, it doesn't work that way. 5 times in our history, the presidential candidate with the most votes wasn't elected. And that's because people don't elect presidents. The Electoral College does. The League of Women Voters has a plan to abolish the antiquated Electoral College, and we are going to hear about that from someone very well equipped to discuss this topic, Jane Newell. However, before I turn it over to Jane, I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes version of her bio, okay? So she's an honorary AAUW Life member, and she joined in 1974 in the Alexandria branch. Yay, yay. She's been active in branches in New York City, Atlanta, and now the Greater Richmond branch. I'm just going to let somebody in here. Okay. And Greater Richmond branch, she is the AAUW Funds Chair. She joined the League of Women Voters in 2017 upon retiring from the Commonwealth of Virginia, specifically the Virginia Information Technology Agency. She has worked on the election laws study team, been active on several issue groups, and served as president of the Richmond Metro Area League. And she's currently director of transformation, maybe she'll tell us what that means, for the League of Women Voters of Virginia. Jane's career encompassed a wide variety of technology and project management positions in government, banking, energy, and technology sectors. She holds an MS in computer science from George Washington University, a bachelor's in mathematics education from Virginia Tech, and PMI's project management professional certification since 2001. And with that introduction, Jane, the virtual stage is yours now.
Thank you. And I'm just delighted to see so many people interested in this topic and so many people from my own branch, which is great. So I'm going to share slides because we've got a lot of them. And if you'll give me a minute to make this happen, we will get going if I can. Okay. I am finally ready. I am not seeing you, so I'm going to suggest that we hold questions till the end. But do make a note if there's any part of this presentation you'd like to talk about at the end, I'm happy to take questions. So the national popular vote. Every vote for president and vice president of the United States would count equally, right? Unfortunately, not today. So we need to change that so that we have a president and vice president that reflect the will of the people, all the people. Our current electoral system came out of Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, which says each state shall appoint and direct their electors. This goes back to the Constitutional Convention. And the Electoral College came about because it was a compromise. Our founding fathers started the Constitutional Convention talking about how to pick the leader. And when they got to the end and they'd done everything else, they still hadn't worked it out. So the Electoral College came out of a last-minute compromise in order to assemble all 13 colonies into the United States. Unfortunately, it was a compromise to protect slavery. At the time, the convention allowed to count enslaved persons as 3/5 of a person. And they did that in order to sort of balance the population between the northern states and the southern states, because the southern states did not want to be at a disadvantage in the House of Representatives. But it's had long-term impact and consequences. It is believed that had they not done this at that time, the South would not have joined the Union, and we might have been two countries instead of one. This is a graph showing the population, and you'll see with the 3/5 compromise and the enslaved persons, the population of the North and South were close to being equal. This picture is of James Madison, and I have him here because not all of the people in the South were enamored with the thought of an electoral college. Madison actually believed we should have one person, one vote, that the popular vote should elect the president. But he and many others who thought that way essentially compromised their own thoughts to come up with the Electoral College and get to an end of that Constitutional Convention and a constitution that we've had since that time. So today, the state electoral votes go to the presidential candidate who wins the popular vote in that state. We'll get back to that a couple times. It is a winner-take-all in most of our states, 48 of our states, which means that the person who wins that state gets all of the electors. So how many electors are there? Well, electors are determined by the number of senators plus the number of representatives, plus more recently, 3 additional electors for District of Columbia. So that makes 538 electors in total. And 270 is a very important number. That is 50% plus 1 elector. And that is the number that the winner has to have in order to become president. And it's usually a slate of president and vice president, obviously. Virginia has 2 senators and 11 representatives, so we have 13 electors. Under winner takes all 13 go to the slate that had the most votes in the state. Now, there are problems, a number of problems with the winner take all electoral college system. Number one, the candidate, as Leslie mentioned, with the most popular votes in the country might not win. And here are the 5 that to date have not, starting with John Quincy Adams back in 1824, and the last one was Donald Trump in 2016. In addition to this becoming a problem, the negotiations, particularly early on, had dramatic historical effect. In the Rutherford B. Hayes win, he did not have the popular vote, and there was a lot of back and forth as to how they would agree. There was also fraud or discussion of fraud, and in order to negotiate to get to a final answer, and he was running against someone named Samuel Tilden, they had to agree to pull the troops out of the South during the period of Reconstruction. Reconstruction and the troops were there in order to make sure that the newly freed men, unfortunately women were still not voting, did have the right to vote, and some even ran for office and were elected to Congress in the time 1865 to 77. But when this failure of the Electoral College occurred, they pulled the troops out, and that opened up the states to determine their own laws and the Jim Crow laws. And we entered the Jim Crow era in 1877, and it really didn't end until the 60s, the 1960s. So had dramatic historic impact. And in addition to the 5 who did not win by popular vote, there were several other near misses. Perry only needed about 60,000 votes in Ohio, and he would have been president. Even though at that election in 2004, Bush had 3 million popular votes more than he did. And then in 2020, it was another near miss. It would have only taken 21,461 additional votes in the right states to turn that one around, even though there was a difference of 7 million popular votes. So those are pretty close, as well as the 5 who did not become president because of the Electoral College. Problem number 2. A small number of battleground states really are the states that determine who becomes president. You'll notice in this picture, there are only 7 identified. This has a ripple effect. Voters who are not in the battleground states know their votes maybe don't matter. And this leads to apathy in voters, fewer people voting than really could be. And it affects not only the presidential race, but also the down ballot outcomes. The spectator or safe states that are either reliably red or reliably blue are really not involved, but the battleground states are. For example, a reliably blue state of California has a lot of Republicans, but their vote never counts in this. The reliably red state of Texas, same thing for them. They have a lot of Democrats whose vote really doesn't count for them. Bringing in Virginia in 2024, 46% who voted red, their ballots did not really count because 100% of the electors, all 13, went for Harris. So remember that, because we'll come back to other implications of the 2024 election. Problem 3, candidates and campaigns focus on battleground states and other states are just spectators. So it's a cute, I've heard people say they really didn't want to be in a battleground state because they're tired of the commercials on television. But it causes other problems as well. You'll see in 2024 those 7 states that were battleground states, but here the numbers in the state show you the number of electors that those states have. In 2020, you'll see there were 12 battleground states. In 24, there were only 7. So we're down to the number of the states in which, I'm sorry, the numbers here are not the electors. The numbers here are the number of visits by the candidates and the campaigns, the number of events in those states. So you'll notice Virginia only has 1, but Michigan had 45 in 2024. Why? Because they were a close battleground state. Virginia has been a battleground state at times. I'm going to show you just back in 2008, 12, and 16, Virginia was considered a battleground state and had 23, 36, or 23 events in the state in those years. But in 2020 and 24, we only had 1. So again, we're not getting the events. And what that means is, and I'm admitting Lisa Scott here, the battleground politics play out. Presidential campaigns woo the battleground states. The voters in those states' concerns are heard by the candidates. The battlegrounds get rewards from the federal government and incumbents because they are negotiating those during the campaign. And the campaigns end up ignoring 70 to 80% of the voters. And again, voter apathy is the result. Problem number 4, not all votes count equally. Here we have Wyoming, which is one of the smallest states in population in the country, and they have 3 electors. And the reason they do is they got their 2 for the Senate and their 1 representative, and that adds up to 3. California, a much more populous state, has 54. But if you take the population of Wyoming and divide by the number of electors, you'll see that each of those electors represents 192,000 people. In California, each elector represents 731,000 people. So the electoral votes are not of equal value. In Virginia, you'll see that our 13 electors each represent 663,000 or 64,000 of our voters. So, how should we elect the president? 1 person, 1 vote. If you could see me, I have my 1 person, 1 vote button on. So why not just fix the problem by abolishing the Electoral College and making this constitutional decision? Well, it requires a constitutional amendment, which unfortunately requires a 2/3 vote in the House, a 2/3 vote in the Senate to pass the amendment bill. Then it requires ratification by 3/4 of the states, which is 38 states. Not sure that I'm believing that's going to happen quickly. We still have some questions about the Equal Rights Amendment, even though it has been ratified by 38 states. So this is a long-term process. However, while we're working toward that as the ultimate goal, the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact can improve the system. It will stop using state winner-take-all process. That's not a requirement of the Constitution. Guarantees the winner is the one with the most votes nationally. Let me emphasize that again, nationwide, not just your electors going to the voters in your state. And ensure every vote is equal. The League has supported abolishing the Electoral College for over 50 years, and the use of NPV for that over 10 years. So this is not something new. Interestingly enough, managing this from a state level, the Congress and ratification process has a precedent was for suffrage. Well before the 19th Amendment, women actually were voting in about a dozen states. You can see on this map the states that are not colored in, all had women voting. The ones that were sort of grayed out had women voting in some elections. And of course, the states that are black in this picture, including Virginia, had no women voting. But this all happened before 1920, when the 19th Amendment was passed and all women. The amendment to the Constitution broadened this to all. So how can we quickly make the Electoral College fairer? Well, by passing the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Now, I would say that most people probably don't know what an interstate compact is, but it's used in many, many things, including defining borders between states. And if you can see my picture, I'm holding up my show and tell. If you've ever taken home a Mega Millions or a Powerball lottery ticket, that's all governed by interstate compact. So we run into the results of interstate compacts every day. The NPVIC would make sure that the presidential candidate who wins the nationwide popular vote would get in office. Do people want this? Well, 2 out of 3 Americans in polls say they want election of the president by popular vote. And there have been polls going back many years, and some as recent as 2024. In Virginia, the poll in 2020 identified that 61% of Virginians wanted election of the president by popular vote. I'm not going to go through all these details, but it's split, even 50% of the Republicans and 73% of Democrats, different parts of the state, gender, race, age, and education, were all in favor of popular vote. The Constitution gives the states the power to assign their electors without requiring a change to the U.S. Constitution. And states have changed their method many times. It's only now that almost all, 48 of them, use winner-take-all methods, such as Virginia does. If we were going to pass the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact in our General Assembly, we do not require, this is not an issue of the Virginia Constitution either. I say that because this year we're going to have at least 3 Virginia constitutional amendments going through the General Assembly. And then they go to the ballot to get voted on. That would happen the second year if it gets through next the 2026 session of the General Assembly, they'll be on the November ballot next year. The national popular vote does not even require that. It just requires a bill to get through the House and the Senate and not get vetoed by the governor. So what happens when it does, or if it does? It will guarantee victory to the presidential candidate who wins the most votes nationwide. It ensures that every American's vote really counts and counts equally. It makes all states competitive, not just the battleground states, which encourages candidates to moderate their proposals to appeal to more voters in all states. Honors the will of the people and does not require a constitutional amendment, so it could go into effect as early as the 2028 presidential election. But it will not go into effect. The language of the bill itself will say it will only go into effect when states with a total of 270 electoral votes have passed the legislation. Right now, the legislation is passed in 17 states plus Washington, D.C., and those add up to 209 of the required 270 electoral votes. So 61 more are needed. And because everybody likes maps, we're going to show you where those are. The green states have already passed, so they're not just the few big ones. In fact, a couple of the big ones have not even taken this up. You'll see it's a little hard to read this map because the states are adjusted to the number of electors in those states. And you'll see Virginia's this orange state in approximately the right location. And the reason it's orange is because this has been passed once by one house in the General Assembly already. But it needs to pass by two and not be vetoed by the governor. You'll see there are a number of other orange states and a number of yellow state. Well, one yellow state, which is in play. Nevada has a different way of passing election laws, and they have to go. There's a similar to our Constitution, has to go through twice. So it will be coming up again in Nevada next year. So 61 are needed. And we'll talk a little more about our plans in Virginia. But we have to address the myths, and there are lots and lots of them. So we were only going to take a handful of the bigger ones. One is the myth that is without the Electoral College, our presidents would be chosen by a few big states like California and New York. And I will note that you always hear California and New York are going to choose our presidents. What's funny about that is Texas and Florida are bigger than New York. So, so even if it was the two biggest ones, they could not elect the president. And California and New York only have 20% of the population, so they couldn't control the outcome of the election at all. In 2024, the votes from 44 states were needed to win the popular vote. And the way this is done, you can see the states at the bottom. As you accumulate the count, before you get to 44, you're still in a competitive race. And then when you hit 44, the winner is identified. In 2020, it took 38 states. In 2012, it took 39 states to get enough votes by popular vote to identify the president. Myth number 2. Without the Electoral College, our presidents would be chosen by a few big cities, and it's always New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago only have 5% of our or population, so they couldn't possibly determine the outcome of the election. In fact, if you look to the graph on the right, the 50 biggest cities only hold 15% of the population. The rural areas of our country hold 14%, which I found very interesting. And the rest are smaller towns and suburbs. So it's not the big cities that are going to make the determination. There's just not enough population there to do that. And it's certainly not just a few big cities that seem to be on the wrong end of the stick at times. New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago get blamed for things. But that's not possible. Myth number 3, and this is that the small states have more clout because of the Electoral College. Well, this little cartoon shows the 8 states that have only 3 that are the smallest. Well, 7 states in DC, I guess. So, but they are the ones with only 3 electors. And on the left, you'll see Wisconsin. Well, the Wisconsin population is about the same as the population of those 8 states. But Wisconsin has 10 electoral votes to their 24. But they only got, in total, between those 8 states, 1 campaign visit in the last 4 presidential elections, where Wisconsin got 58 campaign visits. Remember when we talked about the importance of the campaign visits to the states in really determining which states were going to benefit from the actual campaign itself. So Wisconsin's doing a lot better than 8 states. So those small states really don't have that clout because they're not battleground states. Only one party can win. We've heard that. Well, all you have to do is look at the last 3 or 4 presidential elections, and both parties have taken at least one of them. So that's just not true. Popular vote can go either way for the president and the vice president of the United States. So what's happening in Virginia? Well, we are pushing forward for a passage of this in the legislature in the 2026 session. There is a history. Again, I mentioned before, it passed the House in 2020, but it never got out of the Senate committee. It's also been introduced in a lot of other years, as you can see from this list. But this year, we're doing things just a little differently. The League of Women Voters has a task force, and we are working with the National Popular Vote, the nationwide organization, to get this done. The national organization is currently speaking with delegates and state senators. And they've come to a point where I think they've got patrons identified. And I say that I think because at the same time, all of the House of Delegates is running for re-election. So things are, until after November 4th, we're not going to be certain that we have who we have on one side of this issue or the other. So we're awaiting word on the introduction of the bill, and that doesn't happen until after the election. They don't introduce any bills until after the election. But we've identified before earlier years, it was really not, the league was supportive of it, but really wasn't that active in being supportive. If it passes in Virginia, when will it be effective? Well, remember, we have to get to 270. So we need to get, our 13 electors will only get us to 222. So 4 or 5 other states, actually 3 if they're the right 3, additional states will be needed. So what are we doing? Our strategies influence key legislatures, and that's what the national organization is working on right now. They're not just looking for patrons. They're actually going out and talking to more and more of the delegates and senators and even the candidates running for delegate. We want to mobilize and engage grassroots coalitions, and I want to thank AAUW Virginia for joining us on this, because you're a grassroots organization with branches all over the state. So we're very happy to have you involved, and we're working with some other organizations to join us. And in part, that will be to help us encourage our legislators to vote for it, but also to raise public awareness and support. Legislators like to hear from their constituents on these topics, and we want them to hear from all over the state, not just Northern Virginia, not just Central Virginia, all over the state. So we need to increase public awareness and understanding and drive that constituent demand to the legislatures through communications, presentations, and media. So we can learn more. We do have on the League of Virginia website, we do have an NPV page. It needs a lot of work, so you can go there. It's sort of minimal, but we will be adding to it as this progresses. We need everyone to tell our legislators that you support Virginia joining the NPVIC, and raise awareness through the community through presentations like this one, letters to the editor, or through your social media networks. And you are welcome to join the League of Women Voters of Virginia National Popular Vote Task Force. And where do you do that? The QR code on the left would take you to that page I mentioned on our website. You can watch there for what's going on from the League's perspective, but on the right, the national organization has a website as well that is full of many, many tools. So if you'd like to study more on this, I would suggest going there. I will tell you they have a wonderful book called Every Vote Equal. And I don't know if you can see me on your screens while I'm showing slides, but this is a printed copy of the book. It is over 1,000 pages, so it is a reference book. I only know one person who's read it from cover to cover. But you can download it for free on this website. So it is definitely full of topical and important information. So I promised Leslie I would work through this quickly, and we still have time. So we can stop right here, and I can stop sharing so that I can see you, and perhaps we can address the questions that I'm sure I've confused you somewhere on here in this time. So I'm going to stop share for just a moment and see if you're still all there. Yes, wonderful. Thank you all for coming today. Now, Leslie, Susan, do you want them to put questions in chat or just raise their hand? How do you want to handle this?
I'm all for.
Leslie, you just went on mute. I'm not sure what happened.
I don't know. Okay. When raise your hand, use the reaction thing there. Let us know, and we'll just point or whatever. And I think it's best if you ask your own question, and then we can go from there. Does that sound fair?
Yeah,
I see one hand raised right away, so I'm going to call.
You know what you can do then, Leslie? you could do the hand raised function on the React, and we can.
It is one, there's one already raised.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
okay.
Carol.
But if you want to just do a hand raise function, and I agree with Leslie. I think this is a group. A lot of us know each other. If we don't know each other, it's a good chance to do it. But let's do it in person. Okay. So just do the hand raise function. But Teresa, you were waving, so unmute yourself.
This was a superb presentation, and I thank you, Jane, for doing it and for the people that put this together. I think it deserves to be shown in every branch. We should all set a meeting up around this and get our members active in our local branches. So I know it's being recorded, will this be available to the branches that we could make a meeting out of it? Because I think it's so worthwhile. I'd also like to send it to some of my friends in book club and stuff like that to just really educate them. I thought that piece about the compromise at the Constitutional Convention with the 3/5 vote for Black people in the South was really amazing. I just learned so much from this. Thank you, Jane.
Yes, I told Leslie early on that I would make a PDF version of this available to AAUW, and you can distribute it as you wish. And if you want the PowerPoint, we can talk about that. We've just discovered that PowerPoint, because of some of its features, doesn't run everywhere appropriately. And when you put it in Google Drives, it messes up. So we'll get you a copy that'll actually work for everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Shall I just start with the hand raises that I can see, Leslie?
Or you can go pull up participants and see them. But I did see Carol Dabbs early, so I would like to call on Carol. She was one of the early ones.
Thank you, Leslie. The question I have is, if the if the compact is passed by states that have 270 electoral votes, how does that make it? How is it that the other states would have to abide by it?
The other states do not have to abide by it. Those that have not signed the compact can vote their electors as they normally do. The difference is with 270, they won't win, because with 270 who have signed the compact, those states will determine the winners.
But that would only be those states with the 270 electors would only be voting the populations of their joint population.
They are by contract required to vote for the winner of the nationwide election.
Aha. Okay, that wasn't clear to me. Thank you.
So those states will make sure that
because all of them
the national
would
popular vote winner
or the winner of the
will
national
become.
popular vote. Okay, I see. Thank you.
And that's the difference. And I'm not going to mince words. I mean, Virginia in the 2024, the electors went for Harris because the state voted for Harris. If we were part of this compact, we would have had to send our electors to the one with the most popular vote nationwide. So that's a difference. And so, but it does guarantee that the popular vote winner will win the election. I know it's a little different. Tess, I see your hand up.
Feels a lot like the constitutional amendment to amend how we do our redistricting.
I was looking at Tess Evans.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't hear it. I was having trouble hearing. Who did I hear?
That was Carol just adding a
okay.
comment.
Okay. Yeah, I just couldn't tell who was talking. There's so many people here that I'm not seeing everybody, I'm afraid. Tesco.
Well, thank you for the presentation. This was fantastic and providing the links and resources. I actually just sent some emails to my state legislators here in Missouri about this, saying how I support it. So I've heard some arguments about this, and I'm curious to know if you yourself have heard or know any of what the opposition is saying against abolishing the Electoral College.
The interesting one, and the League, I hope you all know that the League has something called Vote 411, where we ask the candidates questions and we publish their answers. And so when we ask about the NPV, it was interesting to see candidates saying that we can't do this because we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Now, that's not true totally. There's some features of our government that are republic-like, but we've always been a hybrid. And we've always voted. We've always had citizens voting. If you look at the way we vote for our state elections, our local elections, it's all by popular vote. This is the only thing that only keys to our government, which is done differently. And by the way, nobody else in the world does it this way. You know, this is an outlier. But it was interesting to me to see candidates for office saying, we're a republic, we're not a democracy. Sally, I see your hand up. I'm just sort of going left to right here.
First of all, thank you. Second of all, I get the NPW. What does the IC stand for?
Interstate Compact.
Okay.
Interstate Compact.
All
Yeah,
right.
that was the thing that you know, if you go and play
Sure.
Powerball or Mega Millions, you're participating in an interstate compact. It's the way states decide we're going to do things the same way or do
Right.
things together.
They do that with parole too. If a
Yes,
parolee wants to
yes.
move from one state to the other.
Exactly. A
Okay.
lot of criminal, handle decisions state to state. There are interstate compacts that define where the border is between Virginia and North Carolina.
Right.
And all the other states we border with. So those interstate, there are lots of them. It's just not something that we hear about every day.
Right. My other question, since I have you, I'm still not clear. Okay. If we get 277, the equivalent of 277 electoral,
70.
right?
We just need 270.
Okay. So that's just right now, if states that add up to that, okay,
Right.
if they're in the compact, I'm not, okay, you talk about then they have to vote for the national vote.
Winner. Right.
Okay, who has to vote for that?
Well, the states choose the electors. Not everybody knows this process. It's such a sort of
popular vote for those that would have 277.
Right. The states that are in the compact, all states today choose their own electors. So when you go to the polls and vote for a president, you're not really voting for the president. Right. You're voting for a group of electors that your state is going to allow to vote. But in the states that have signed the interstate compact, those electors are going to be required to support the winner of the nationwide popular vote.
Okay.
So by that means that the person with the most votes nationwide is going to end up winning.
Okay, if say in Virginia, Harris won, okay, but Harris didn't win in those other compact states, we would still have to vote for her opponent?
We would have to vote for the national total, whoever had the national total popular vote. That was the winning national vote, national popular vote winner.
Jane, can
And
I
we would
take a
have to
swing at
vote for
this?
them, even if it was not in Virginia.
Okay. Why would we have electors at all?
Because the
Well, if we could abolish the Electoral College, we wouldn't need them.
I mean, if it's just going to be popular vote, it would just be popular vote.
except that you would need a constitutional amendment to do away with the electoral college because that's in the Constitution, and those are very hard to come by. Okay, as we saw with
Yeah.
Some
CRA.
of us election geeks actually watch the Electoral College vote. You could last year, you could actually get online, or actually January of this year, you could get online and watch the Virginia electors, and it's a ceremony. You know, they all go to the Capitol in Virginia and fill out paper and sign papers, and you know, it's very ceremonial, but it doesn't mean anything because we all knew that 13 electors were going to vote for Harris because she won in this state, but she did not have the full national
Okay.
popular vote. Yeah.
And Virginia Beach is doing a thing tomorrow night with League of Women Voters,
Good.
and we're partnering with some other things. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Nora, I see your hand up. It's been up for a while. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I'm thinking of is to walk this, to go further and then walk it back. So if all the states agreed to the interstate compact, then all the electors would vote based on the national popular vote,
Yes.
and we would have a pure outcome there.
Mhm.
But perhaps the easier, we don't have to have them all if we have enough to get 270.
Yes.
Okay, that's just
That is an interesting way to and maybe is a little more comfortable way to think about it. You know, one of the things to be aware of is this concern about the small states. 4 small states in the District of Columbia have already signed the compact. So the small states aren't thinking they're going to have less clout or more clout one way or the other. They've signed the compact.
But what about these states that have disproportionate power at this time? I mean, Wyoming always comes up as 3 electors, one for every,
But nobody goes to Wyoming to campaign either. So they
but
don't really have the clout they think they do.
But that's another piece is if we could alter the campaign finance laws, would that not also affect how voting works? But not tonight.
Well, yeah, one thing at a time. Susan, I think you're up next.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with the smaller states, they do have clout because they have the same number of senators as California or Virginia. So they carry a lot of clout. And I think looking at this, it's a way to address the problem where we've had a number of elections in recent history where the winner of the popular vote did not end up serving in the highest office of the land. So the will of the people was suppressed by this system. Now, my question is, in view of everything that's going on, and I'm just talking political science now. What are the various things that could be done to, if you say you got all these states, to derail this? by the Congress, by the Supreme Court, because clearly there would be individuals who would not want to do this because they like the system the way it is. Although in this case, I think if we're looking at really modern history, that person has both won has one without the popular vote and then one with the popular vote. But I'm just wondering what kind of efforts could be thrown up to obstruct this move in the future.
Well, some people say, oh, we shouldn't do this because there'll be lawsuits. Well, there are lawsuits every time we make a change. Somebody doesn't like it. So, yes, there probably will be lawsuits. The National Popular Vote, the national organization, feels very confident that they can win those lawsuits. Other than that, there isn't, unless if Congress tried to pass a bill that made it impossible to do it this way through interstate compact, then there would be a lawsuit because the states would sue Congress or would sue the federal government on that, because the Constitution does give the right to the states to determine how their electors are used.
Okay.
But yes, there will be lawsuits. Nobody is expecting anything else. Marcy, I know you've been patient.
I always like to see who's bankrolling the organizations that are like the National Public Vote organization. And it's George Soros, Teitelbaum, big time progressive people. And I see this as a deterrent because the other side is going to say they're buying the vote. No, that's not true. But I'm just saying that I can see articles in the paper about this.
Yeah, you might want to go to the nationalpopularvote.com site.
I did.
You look through the they have a fairly nonpartisan group, which is rather surprising.
But
we have some red states that have already passed the compact.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people who bankroll the organization. And they are big time George Soros, Teitelbaum, and I can't remember the other two. And I can see the other side, whatever side it is, saying that that these folks who are bankrolling this organization are buying the vote. I mean, I can see it in my mind's eye. Because it's been done before.
Interestingly enough, that wasn't what we've heard lately from candidates, and there were other objections, but not that. It's interesting. Laurie?
Yes, thanks, Jane. I have a question because it seems like some states, especially like California and very large states, it takes a very long time for them to count all the votes. It takes them a long time to get all the votes back from the military overseas. So could there be some issue with the fact that it could take sometimes 3 to 4 weeks to get actually all the votes in certain states? And every state has different laws about how they run their election and when the cutoff date is of absentee votes, of cutoff dates of when they can, and like Virginia has provisional voting, so that has to be checked out, and that takes time. So to me, I mean, I'm in favor of it, but I see where then somebody could say, well, question the national vote and say, okay, I want to.
The national vote is not official until it's certified,
Right, but
which in
correct.
Virginia happens around Thanksgiving or early December. It's not, I mean, people think that election night is when things are determined. They're not.
Right.
Nobody's vote is official on election night.
So,
States
so,
wouldn't change the way they vote in any way. They would continue to follow their current procedures.
but wouldn't it be that it would take maybe 30 to 40 days following the election to really know the whole national vote?
Let me.
The college doesn't meet till January 6th.
Right.
Right. And I just feel like in today's world, I'm in favor of it because I feel like we aren't getting our votes counted, but that people could say there's something fishy going on or whatever. I'm just saying it's like every state handles their election differently.
You're right about that, but all of them go through a process of, and I'm having trouble. Okay, here. A process of certifying their elections.
That didn't show up on my shirt.
Okay.
Oh, shoot, here. This is the one I'm looking for. In Virginia, by noon on the 74th day before, I'm sorry, here it is. The electors convene at the state capitol at noon on the first Tuesday after the second Wednesday in December. So that is when the electors actually become official and how they vote becomes official. So that's December. That's a long time after an early November election. I just wanted to bring this up. This is current law. That would not change. The timing would not change.
I just remember from the last election that it seemed forever for California, people were waiting, really what was the popular vote? And it kept going up and up for weeks and weeks after, even though the electors had made their decision. I'm just saying that it took forever to actually know.
The electors don't make a decision until December. And then their votes, all the electors' votes aren't counted until January 6th. So and it's still, you're still handling ballots and votes the same way that you are doing it today. There shouldn't be the interstate compact should not cause any delay.
That's the only thing I see as probably something that could be construed as being a negative, or saying it takes too long to get really the actual number of votes, the actual popular vote.
Well, I will say that I've shared this with some people, but I wrote my 8th grade government paper on the Electoral College. And at the end of the report, I said it should be abolished. But one of the things, it was interesting because you can imagine when I was in 8th grade, some decades ago, I had to do my research at libraries. I had to send in for articles from the Congressional Record. It's none of this online stuff that students do today. But I was seeing a lot of, well, the reason we have an electoral college is because you have to get on a horse and take your counts to the Capitol. And that almost made a little bit of sense in those days, but it doesn't make any sense today. Things can be instantaneous in their communication. You're right. Laurie, it takes time to count those votes and certify those votes, but we still have the time to do that and still use the national popular vote.
I hope it's right, because I'm a firm believer that we really need to get rid of, well, we're not going to ever get rid of the Electoral College without an amendment, but just find some way that the popular vote does count in going forward. And thank you for a very good presentation too.
Thank you. Susan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to make one more comment, and I think Lori's onto something. It's the speed with which votes are counted, and that it's been used by some candidates. Why I was ahead at 7 o'clock, and then all these votes came in at the end, and so forth, and maybe the system will have to adjust to that as well. It's in Fairfax, for example. I remember we had a Zoom meeting. I think our branch did, or somebody did, with Kate Hanley when she was the head of elections in Fairfax, and they had finally gotten permission. It had been for a long time that they could not open the absentee ballots until the polls closed, and then they had to open them all up and then scan them through. Now, this was some years ago. They had been given authorization to open up the absentee ballots, I think at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not to scan them through, but they could at least open them and get them set so they could run them through the machine. So, they may have to look at ways of expediting the counting of the votes, particularly, if they're early votes, they've already got those numbers. If there's paper, if they're absentee ballots. So I think there is an issue with this because the person winning the election is going to want to have some sort of window of time to prepare for that. And it's going to have to be done nationwide so that people can go. So there might be some steps that have to be taken to just expedite the counting of the votes, so I think that's a real issue. But I think this was a great presentation, and what you're proposing, I think, is fair today. Okay, it's fair because too many people are disenfranchised because of this electoral college, which was created at a different time for a different purpose. And it's not serving, we're in different times now. So
I used to spend election night. Part of my job was to spend election night at the Department of Elections offices. It's always interesting for election geeks to watch this. In Virginia alone, if it's a state election, all of the rural counties get in first. So you see, this is the view of who's winning, and they're way ahead. Well, guess who comes in last? It's Northern Virginia, the big population areas, because it does take longer to count those votes. There are more of them.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, the winner is now way down below. And as you get later in the evening, you get to, add more and more of the counties and cities in to the total, you come up with the ultimate winner. As far as recounts, I don't see any of this requiring a nationwide recount because states run elections. If you have a problem with the way they were counted, it's not going to be in 50 states. It's going to be in that state or that state. So, they would handle a recount the same way that they handle it today. And do it in the state, not 50 states. So I'm not really concerned about this, about the timing. I'm also in favor of ranked choice voting. That does have some impacts on time, and that's, but that's another complete discussion, and has nothing to do with NPV.
Any more questions? Well, I will take the first stab at thanking Jane for a great presentation. She, when we were talking before we got started, she thought maybe it was too geeky or to whatever. I don't know. I'm just enthralled with listening to all those things. And I guess from listening to the questions and seeing people's faces, I think it was a home run, as we say. And anyone else have any final words?
I think, Jane, there are people that, how willing are you to do other, do other shows on the road because there's clearly a lot of interest in this. I think it's the time. It's also the interest that we all have in voting and fair voting. And it was really outstanding. And we'll keep you all apprised when Jane has a PDF to share. We'll be willing to, get that out to people. And this has been a great way to put
At the league, we've set up a task force, and I am trying to recruit a few more speakers, like a speakers bureau.
That would be
But
great.
I'm willing to do additional presentations if there are local organizations that you'd like to have here the same one. I'm also considering doing trying to get a shorter version of this. But then I think your Q&A gets longer because you don't cover all the topics.
Yeah. Well, maybe for district meetings or something like that, but I think it is a really important topic, and this was really excellent in explaining it. So
I think for one of my next history videos, I'll go a little bit into the depth of the Three-Fifths Compromise and why Electoral College was actually voted on in the first place and elected. So, yeah, that's, of course, I geeked out on that part,
Yeah. History is your strength.
Yeah. But this is great.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
thanks for coming.
And
this
thanks,
was a really
Jane.
great turnout.
Thank
and
you,
we
Jane.
really appreciate it.
Very welcome. Leslie, don't forget to turn off
Thanks,
recording.
Jane. I got my finger on the stop record button.